Hello, boys and girls. Greg from the Scary Spirits Podcast here to make you another cocktail. This week's cocktail is called the Galaxy Magic Mule, and it is the featured cocktail in this week's podcast. To begin with, we need to make some magic blue ice, which is made with Butterfly Pea Flower Tea, which is blue. So I've made that, and I've crushed the ice. Right. We're gonna do it in a mug. A mule is usually in like a copper mug, but because the colors of this one, you use a glass mug. So we're gonna partially fill our mug with crushed regular ice. Okay, I think that's enough. Then we're going to add some blue ice. Okay, so we got our blue ice on top of our regular ice. Next, we're going to add lime juice. 1/2 ounce. And that may be all I have. 1/2 ounce. Let's check. Aha. There we go. That's better. So we add the lime juice. Next, vodka. 2 ounces of vodka. Two ounces of vodka. Ooh, look. It's already changing color, boys and girls. Finally, some ginger beer, 4 to 6 ounces. And then we top with more magic blue ice. There you have it. So basically, boys and girls, the idea here is that the lime juice makes the Butterfly Pea Flower Tea change colors. So it goes from blue to purple. It's pretty good. Of course, you get the ginger beer. Put some more magic blue ice in there. There we go. Right. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoy the podcast. See ya.
Greg and I have watched a lot of horror movies. and we've learned a few things along the way. For instance, if someone promises you that they will make you stay young and beautiful forever, run. Run fast and run far away. And that especially holds true in this week's episode of the Scary Spirits podcast, The Mystery of the Wax Museum. Let's be honest, there is only one sure way to remain young and beautiful forever, and that's to stop living when you are young and beautiful. So it's a privilege to grow old and not so beautiful. At least that's what I try to remind myself of every day. Cheers!
Welcome to the Scary Spirits podcast. Please be advised that the presenters may use adult language and or discuss adult situations. This podcast is not intended for younger listeners or those that may be easily offended. So, if you're ready, let's go.
Hi, I'm Greg.
And I'm Karen.
And welcome to the Scary Spirits podcast, the podcast that combines the two very different but highly compatible worlds of scary films and alcoholic spirits.
What could possibly go wrong?
Indeed. How are you, Karen?
I'm doing great. How are you, Greg?
I'm good.
We're not a match, but that's pretty good for us.
It is. I believe this week was your choice, was it not, Karen?
It was.
And what film have you chosen for us this week?
I have chosen the 1933 classic, Mystery of the Wax Museum.
Any reason you chose this film, Karen?
Well, as everyone knows, this week is Lionel Atwill's birthday.
It's today, actually, Karen.
Well, there you go. See?
How old would Mr. Atwill been today, Karen?
That's an excellent question, Greg. How old?
I believe he would have been 138 years old today.
Excellent. It also stars the lovely Fay Wray.
Yes, it does.
With the short hair that you do not prefer.
I know. Don't remind me, Karen. I realize it. But oddly enough, she filmed this the same time she was filming King Kong, in which she has the lovely long hair. So
was it pinned up or did she have extensions?
Don't know.
Or was it a wig? You think she wore a wig?
Maybe.
It'd be a good one. It looks good.
In this, or you think she wore the wig?
Oh, I don't
King
know.
Kong?
It could have been either. We have a mystery.
Yes.
Already.
All right. Do you have a cocktail for this film, Karen?
I do.
And what would that be?
It's called the Galaxy Magic Mule.
And why did you choose this cocktail, Karen?
Well, Greg, it's a color-changing cocktail.
Okay.
And it has two colors.
Go on.
And did you know that The Mystery of the Wax Museum was one of the last two dramatic fiction films made using the two-color Technicolor process?
I did know that, Karen.
You did?
I did.
Well, there you go. So do you know what the other film was?
I think it was Dr. X, right?
It was. Ding, 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 ding. Very, very well done.
Also starring Lionel Atwill and Miss Fay Wray.
So two-color Technicolor. So we have a two-color drink.
Okay. I guess it's two-color. It's really kind of three, but whatever.
Don't burst my bubble. Mine's
right.
Only two. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, I got it's very light at the bottom, then it goes to a purple, then it goes to a blue.
Well, mine doesn't look like that. You did it wrong.
So enlighten me, Karen, and tell me how I should have made it.
Well, we're using something that you have to make ahead called Magic Blue Ice, which is very exciting. So you're going to need Butterfly Pea Flowers. They're not available usually, maybe at a health food store or something. So I got mine on Amazon. They're not expensive.
Did you buy the actual flowers?
Yes.
Or the Butterfly Pea Flower Tea?
No, I bought the flowers.
I bought the tea.
Oh, maybe that's why yours didn't
Mine's fine. It's fine.
It's not fine.
All right, go on.
So you're going to add hot water to the butterfly pea flowers and allow to steep for 3 to 4 minutes. Then you strain out the flowers and pour the liquid into ice cube trays and freeze. So that's your magic blue ice.
Okay. So we do that a day or two ahead of time.
However long it would take in your freezer to freeze a couple ice cubes. You don't need many.
Okay. What's next?
So you're going to partially fill the mug with crushed clear ice and then top it with crushed magic blue ice. Then you're going to add a half an ounce of freshly squeezed lime juice, 2 ounces of vodka, and 4 to 6 ounces of ginger beer. And then you're going to top with additional magic blue ice. Dun, 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 and there it is. Yes. And what happens is, well, do you want to know why it changes color? Or do you already know?
I know why, Karen, but you want to tell our friends and listeners, that would be fine with me.
Did you look it up?
It talks about it in the recipe.
Well, it just has to do with pH. So the butterfly pea tea is blue at a neutral pH. And then when you add the lime juice, which is acidic, it turns acidic. So it changes color.
It's like one of them strips. What are they called, Karen?
Usually indicators.
Yeah. Well, like litmus or aren't they?
Litmus test. Yeah. You can. Yeah. But yeah, so it changes from blue to mine's a pretty purpley pink.
Purpley pink. Yeah. When acid from the lime juice mixes with the blue ice.
Yeah. So it does look like a galaxy a little bit. It's pretty.
It is.
Doesn't have a lot of alcohol. It's just 2 ounces of vodka. And I always say this, but I think I would replace the ginger beer with ginger ale and like it more. It's a lot of ginger for me, but it's good.
Should we give our friends and listeners time to make their magic blue ice and their magic mule?
Their galaxy mule, galaxy magic mule. Yes, go steep some tea flowers.
Hold on. And we're back.
Yes, we are.
All right, Karen, might you have a brief synopsis for us?
I do.
Go on. Tell me a story.
Ivan Igor is the sculptor at a famous wax museum in London. When his partner, Joe Worth, burns down the museum for the insurance money, Igor is trapped inside. Years later, he reemerges in New York as the curator of a new wax museum, which boasts incredibly lifelike statues. When model Joan Gale goes missing, however, reporter Florence Dempsey follows the clues to Igor's museum, where she discovers a terrible secret.
Mostly accurate.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
All right, Karen, are you ready to get into it?
Let's go.
All right. Where did you watch this film, Karen?
Well, the only place you can find it is on DVD.
Blu-ray.
So I watched it. Sorry, I always say that and you always correct me.
Well, they're both. You can get them either way.
I watched a Blu-ray DVD that was sent to me by a wonderful person for Christmas. Where did you watch yours?
I watched mine on a Blu-ray as well, Karen.
That was not sent to you by a wonderful person?
No one gifted it to me. I had to buy it on my own, Karen. But that's fine. It's been on my wish list for a while on Amazon anyway.
If only you had someone who would buy the things off your wish list.
Yeah, I guess I could share it, but no.
Yeah, you probably don't want to do that.
No. All right, the film opens, Karen, and we have credits. I did notice that the gowns were made by Ori-Kelly. Ever heard of Ori-Kelly, Karen?
No, I have not.
I don't know if it's like a...
Does that mean the gowns on the wax figures? Because there weren't gowns.
No, I think the actors.
They didn't wear gowns.
Well, they wore dresses.
Yes, nice. I love the clothes in this one, as I'm sure you know.
So did my wife. She commented as we were watching it.
I don't know why that's not stylish now. So pretty.
We have, after the credits, we have London, 1921.
In the rain.
Yep, it's a stormy night and we're at the Wax Museum, Karen.
Did you see the Elizabethan ruffle? As the camera panned.
I did not make a note of it, no. And what'd you call him? Ivan? How do you say his name? I know it's Igor's last name.
Most people call him in the film Igor. It was confusing
Igor,
because
yeah.
they said Ivan Igor, and if it was one or the other, I could barely tell the difference. So you can use either one.
Okay, well, I'm gonna call him Ivan.
Okay.
Although I think I did read the pronunciation, so I know it's Igor.
Well, they call him Igor a couple times. But the camera is panning around and we see a lot of scenes, like little vignettes set up of different. They look like some common scenes mixed in with some very political, historical scenes, I would say. But not what you'd think of as Madame Tussauds, Chamber of Horrors or anything. Nothing.
Yeah. Or a wax museum. It's not a very typical wax museum, I didn't think. Every wax museum I've been to, it's like you're walking through a hallway and there's separate vignettes, right? Separate scenes you walk by.
Well, these
this
are
is
separate
like all
scenes,
kind of, but they're all like kind of out in the open.
Well, it's theater in the round, like Def
Very
Leppard.
open floor plan, Karen.
You just missed my Def Leppard reference. You're surrounded by them. You're right. There's no particular order. It looks like you can just wander through in circles, kind of.
We see Ivan sculpting a figure, smoking a Marlboro, Karen.
Yeah, and I said there's a nice Joan of Arc vignette with shadows behind it.
Yes.
It looks really cool.
Yes, Ivan knows about that. I will bring up later. So then two men arrive by stagecoach, and another watches from around the corner, smoking a cigar. So at first, Ivan seems kind of annoyed when they knock on the door, but he's very pleased to see them. I guess one of them is a friend, and he has brought along another professional from a museum or something like that. And he kind of gives them a tour of the museum, and they ask him, about how he started in wax. And we learn that he used to be a sculptor in his native land, but felt he could get more realistic flesh and blood from working with wax.
Yes, rather than cold stone.
And the one guy says he wants to submit his work to the Royal Academy when he returns from some trip to Egypt he's doing.
So as he's showing him around, he's very connected to his sculptures, and he's talking about how long it took them to be sculpted just so that he was happy and they looked realistic. And he shows them Voltaire, and he talks about how very stubborn he was and how difficult it was to sculpt him. So I just looked up Voltaire quickly because I recognized the name. And was highly instrumental in the French Enlightenment. He was a writer, historian, and philosopher who attacked the Catholic Church and advocated freedom of religion, freedom of expression, and separation of church and state. So back then, quite the rebel. But as he's showing them around, do you want to talk about Marie Antoinette? That's his favorite, I think.
Yes, he shows them Marie Antoinette, which is, I believe, is his masterpiece.
Yes. She looks like she's breathing.
She is.
The first woman that he shows, I don't know, it wasn't Joan of Arc, I don't think, but she was blinking. Her eyes were closed, but you could see that her eyes were moving underneath her closed eyes. So,
yeah, Marie Antoinette is played by Fay Wray. That is Fay Wray standing there motionless.
Yes.
Trying as hard as she could to do so.
So we're getting the impression that his statues are highly realistic. Yes. Because he's showing us these sculptures, and basically they're using real people in them.
The lights were actually too hot for the wax, and a lot of them began to melt.
Oh, well, and some of them look like cardboard cutouts too in the background.
So the men leave.
I can see that happening. That's a behind the scenes kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet.
So the men leave, and he speak to Marie Antoinette after they leave.
Yes. And they were impressed with the sculptures, for sure.
Then the man from around the corner enters, and we find out he is Joe Worth, right? The co-owner of the museum. And he talks about how the museum is losing money and he proposes collecting the fire insurance.
Yeah, the rent isn't paid. It doesn't sound like people are going to see these sculptures. Again, he says because people want to see horror and macabre. They don't want to see historical figures. They want to see blood and guts and stuff.
Jack the Ripper.
Yeah. And they talk about that. And
He
he's
says-
got £15,000 invested.
Yeah. And they will each get £10,000 from the fire insurance if the place burns.
And I tried to look that up, and I must have done a terrible job because it comes out to over $1 million.
£10,000?
£10,000. Well, £15,000 in 1933.
So £1,000 in 33 would be the equivalent of £91,566 now. So times that times 10, and there you go. Right? That's like £1 million, right?
Yeah,
Almost £1 million, which is the equivalent to how many dollars, Karen?
it's a little more.
Okay.
Not a ton. Because
So that's 10,000 would be almost £1 million.
it just
today.
seemed like a lot to me. But I can see why he'd want his money back, you know, if that's really how much he has invested in it. But Igor is mortified by that. He can't even believe that this is an option that this partner thought up. He's not interested in it at all.
And then Joe says it would be easy. It would be easy. Watch.
It's
he lights
so
his
easy.
cigar.
Yes. Uses his cigar to light some paper and
Light some matches, and then he lights a piece of paper with the matches. And he and Ivan struggle, whatever his name is. And then Joe lights the dress of one of the figures while they are struggling. He looks to do it very, very deliberately.
yes, because he's showing him how easy it is. They're struggling and he reaches right over and lights and it goes up like nobody's business.
The men struggle as the fire spreads quickly. Ivan falls down the little stairs and appears to be knocked unconscious. Joe leaves and locks the door behind him.
And the wax figures are melting and they show it. It's pretty
Mhm.
gruesome.
Mm-hmm.
They must have used real wax figures
Yes.
at that point.
Yes, they did. This was actually the last scene they filmed
Well, that makes sense.
because they
But
used these same actual wax figures in the museum in the later part of the movie. So, yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah. The whole place is burning. And what's his name? Joe throws a lantern right at Marie Antoinette and she goes up in flames, which is the ultimate dig.
Then Ivan regains consciousness and watches in horror as his wax figures burn and melt.
And he can't get out, which is pretty brutal that he locks him in there.
Next, New Year's Eve, Karen, New York, 1933.
It's midnight.
The clock has just struck midnight. People are partying,
It's a big ass party.
but they ain't drinking, Karen. None of them have a drink.
Well, but
It was prohibition. There was no drinking in 1933. Legally, anyway.
well, Florence finds her. She's drunk a couple of times in this, so she knows a guy who knows a guy.
Right. So we see an ambulance arrive at an apartment building, it appears, to pick up a body. The people who live there are all partying
Yeah, it's a big party.
and hanging
There's
out
like
the windows.
big strips of paper falling and they're throwing it everywhere. It's like a ticker tape parade, but at an apartment building.
And we see Ivan look out one of the windows and smoking a Marlboro, and he does not look so happy.
Well, he's alone. He's not partying. I don't know who that reminds me of, but whatever.
And we see the headline of the New York Express, Karen. And it says, "Beautiful Joan Gale, a suicide." So that's the body they are taking out.
And as they're bringing the body out, there are a bunch of reporters there asking questions. And one of them is Florence. But then the newspaper comes out. Yes.
And we see a man walking through the streets. We just see the back of him walking. He enters a building, goes into an office, and picks up the phone and makes a call. And then he turns around and we see it as Joe Worth.
Yeah, it's not I thought it was an apartment, but is it an office?
Yeah.
And it's not very nice.
No. And he's making some kind of arrangements for something to be picked up or something. I thought it was a body at the time, but it's not.
But they want us to think it is.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know. Yeah. So then we're at the morgue, Karen. Men are wheeling a body in, who we assume is Joan Gale, I think. But the body sits up.
Well, there's two workers that bring it in, and I don't know what you'd call them, morgue workers. And they say, what's this one? It's a woman whose husband killed her because she talked too much. And they joke about women. Now they talk too much, which...
Yeah, so that is not Joan Gale.
No, and
it's
then...
a different body.
Right, and then the body sits up under the sheet.
And one of the men says it is the embalming fluid causes them to move or whatever.
Does it?
That is a myth, Karen.
Oh, I was going to say, I'd never heard that before, but...
It is a myth. And when we cut to the morgue, we see two shadows walking outside before we see the inside.
Yeah, two men outside, I think, because they've got the hats and everything.
Then we see another body on another table rise, and it is a man with a disfigured face. Apparently, he's been hiding out there in the morgue. So he begins to check the bodies in the morgue.
He's looking for something specific, it
Yes.
seems.
Finally, he seems to find the one he is looking for, and his breathing becomes heavy, Karen.
Yes, it does. I did notice that. It's not Darth Vader breathing, though.
No.
It's just kind of labored.
Yes.
Which would be probably hard to breathe if your face was half burned off like his was.
So he takes that body and wheels it to the window, Karen. He binds it with ropes and lowers it down to two men waiting below.
Yes, so she's on the gurney. The rope is already at the window. He ties her up, but then he lifts the gurney and she slides out. I thought that was pretty funny. Shoo, right out the window.
Next, we cut to the newspaper office. We've got reporters typing away, Karen. I bet you love this scene. All
I did.
Typewriting.
All those typewriters going.
And we see Florence, and she meets with her editor.
She's a little tipsy.
You think?
Oh, yeah. I wrote a drunk woman.
So.
I said a drunk woman comes into the office.
Well, I didn't think she was drunk at all.
Oh, she was drunk.
I never noticed.
He tells her. That's why she has a headache at the morgue. Like, she's hungover. She's got a guy who can get her what she wants.
But I guess he tells her she's not pulling her weight or something and threatens to fire her.
Mm-hmm.
Tells her to get out, and she's fired unless she brings back a good story by the evening paper. I think he says something like he doesn't care if it's a spaghetti recipe or something.
Yeah, he just needs something. But she was out partying because it was New Year's Eve. She says there's nothing going on out there. And then he looks out the window and it's this huge party.
So then we see men carrying a box marked fragile, handle with care. And Joe, I guess, begins to open the box. And who we learn is Professor Darcy enters. And Joe accuses him of talking. And he pushes him out the door.
I was confused by this. I didn't understand what was going on at this moment. But Professor Darcy, he's strung out.
He's a heroin addict.
He's an addict, yes.
I made a note that when he falls out the door and hits the brick wall, it seems to give way.
Yeah, it did.
Weight. It's a very well-painted
thin brick wall.
Yeah, piece of plywood or something.
It shakes the walls.
And then we see the shadow of another man giving Professor Darcy drugs.
So is that why Professor Darcy is there, just to get the drugs?
Yeah. I think he's helping with Joe's import-export business as well.
Okay, gotcha.
So next we see Florence at the police station when she asks the cop how his sex life is and takes the dirty magazine he is looking at from him.
Yeah, she's like one of the guys, she's a tough talking reporter. She's joking with all of them, which she is the only female in that whole place of typewriters, if you noticed. Tough broad.
Cops tell Florence that Joan Gale may have been murdered. I guess, she's looking for a story, of course, and they know that.
And they have, it looks like a relationship.
They say her ex-boyfriend, George, was in her apartment a few hours before she was found dead. And then Florence rushes out excitedly to get the story.
The policeman tells her they ordered an autopsy over at Bellevue, and he says, you better hurry. And she says, don't give this to anyone else. And he says, it's all yours. So she runs over there.
So we're at Bellevue, I guess.
Yeah, where the
Autopsies.
And she has a hangover. That's why she's putting ice on her head.
She's not putting ice on her head. She's leaning against a
she picks up a glass
instrument. Does
she?
Yeah,
but she also puts a glass with ice on her head.
So the coroner finishes with the body he's working on and tells the men to bring in number 7, the Gale girl. And the cops are there, and the cops and doctors looks like a police investigator. He's a plainclothes policeman.
Yeah, there are a bunch of those in this.
Yeah. And they talk about the possible causes of death before examining the body, which I didn't really understand.
Well, the rumor was the police ruled it a suicide.
Yeah, but one of the doctors says it could have been drugs. He says his initial findings, judging from her eyes and whatnot, she died from an overdose of laudanum.
Yeah, because he got there 4 hours later or something. So do you know what laudanum is? I think we've talked about this before.
I know it's 10% opium, Karen.
It is, in high-grade alcohol. And it's widely used to treat everything from pain and insomnia to female disorders. It's even used to it was used to quiet crying babies. But so that's why they think, well, it could have been accidental if she had female issues and was using it. She might have overdosed. But did you hear him talk about, well, if she took it, it would be straight up laudanum. Mm-hmm. But if someone poisoned her, it would be diluted. I don't know how they would be able to tell that because it's going to dilute in her body. Yeah. But still.
But the cop said that George had a new twist.
Yes, he did.
But he was there.
Hours before.
Yes. Then men rush in saying the body is gone. Florence calls Redder and he tells her to get to George Winton.
Yes.
So then we cut to another headline there, Karen, and it says millionaire playboy held as murder suspect. And he's in jail. So Florence goes to visit George in jail and he is reluctant to talk to her. He doesn't trust the media. Regardless, Florence starts asking him questions and he answers them.
Yeah, well, she just walks right in the cell. Like the policeman opens the cell and walks away. He's a potential murderer. And they just let her walk in there and sit down with him.
I had the feeling that the policeman opened the cell and walked away, but he was like right around the corner.
But still, no precautions whatsoever. Florence knows people. That's all I'm going to say.
But George says they broke up, but they were still friends. And they had a few drinks and he left. He was on his way to Bermuda or something. And he was just stopped by to say goodbye or some shit. And Florence tells him that the body was stolen from the morgue. And he says, why? What? How? And Florence says, well, that's exactly what they're going to ask you, kid. But she leaves and says, I think you'll be fine. And then Florence meets again with her editor, tells him that she thinks George is innocent. And she says that 8 bodies have been stolen in the last 18 months. She thinks that's a much better angle for a story.
But the editor thinks the millionaire did it. He says he hopes he fries.
And we learned that one of the people missing is a judge. He's been missing for like 3 months or something. Then Florence threatens to quit.
If she can't have it her way.
Yep. Editor tells her to go ahead and follow the story the way she wants to. Cut to a man sweeping the streets, and we see the sign that says London Wax Museum grand opening tonight. First time in America. And it's Otto who's sweeping the streets, by the way. And we see people preparing the museum for opening. They're painting and dressing the mannequins. Ivan enters in his wheelchair. He chastises his assistant Ralph for his knowledge or lack thereof of anatomy.
Yes.
He also chastises his other assistant Hugo, who is deaf mute, more or less, because he's sculpting a bust of someone that looks just like him.
With an 8-pack, which is totally what I would do if I was a sculptor. I'd put my head on it and put an amazing body.
Ivan says he can no longer use his hands to sculpt after the fire, and we see him pull his hands out.
He calls them claws, and he laments that he can't sculpt anymore.
Yes. And he accuses his assistant of having no soul. Next, Professor Darcy arrives. That's what I call him. He's also referred to as Sparrow.
Oh, I only heard him called Professor Darcy.
Yeah, it's a weird character, but Ivan tells his assistant that Professor Darcy works from home and does magnificent work.
Darcy knows art and is an artist. His figures are realistic and lifelike.
And apparently Professor Darcy has brought a large box and needs help carrying it in. So Otto goes out and carries it in. They bring it in and open it.
Yeah.
And it has a figure in it that resembles the original Joan of Arc statue that was in London. And Ivan tells Professor Darcy that he would like him to restore Marie Antoinette as well.
That's his goal, is to redo Marie Antoinette.
And Darcy tells Ivan, I think I will have something to tell you soon. And Ivan says, I have something for you too. So he's probably paying him off in drugs for whatever it is.
I would guess,
doing.
yes.
So then Ralph goes to the payphone, Karen, and he calls his girlfriend, Charlotte.
Who's exercising on the floor in her heels.
Yes. Who is
As you do.
Is Fay Wray. And they make a lunch date. And then we see that Florence and Charlotte appear to be roommates.
Florence has a headache because she's hungover, so she lays back down when she stood up. But Florence starts giving Charlotte shit, basically, because her boyfriend is poor. Says, well, he's very sweet. She says, yeah, you're going to tell the landlady when you can't pay the rent, but he's very sweet.
Yeah. Florence is all about the money, I wrote.
And she did meet the millionaire last night.
I said, I think Florence has her eye on George.
Yep. Well, who wouldn't?
George's lawyers come to the jail and spring him. And apparently Daddy is helping as well.
Yes, Daddy took care of it.
Next, we see Florence and Charlotte arriving at the Wax Museum. They went together, and Florence is supposed to meet Ralph for lunch. Ralph comes out and tells Charlotte he will be unable to go to lunch with her. They are too busy working to get the museum ready in time for the opening that evening. Florence goes into the Wax Museum and watches as the Joan of Arc figure is set up.
She's a pushy broad, that one, but she gets shit done.
She seems to recognize that it looks a lot like Joan Gale, Karen.
Yeah, she's staring at it.
And she seems a little freaked out.
This is where it just first dawns on me. Okay. Because I thought this was coincidence. And then I thought, is he killing people that look like the actual previous statues? Like, it took me until now, right this moment, to go, oh, wait, he's killing people who resemble his sculpting from London. I didn't know that until this point right now.
Well, someone is.
Well, yes, he's orchestrating it all, though.
And she recoils as Hugo inserts a dagger into one of the figures. Did you see the guy lifting the Voltaire statue out of the box? Remember the guy lifting the Voltaire statue?
I remember, but I
out?
didn't make a note of it.
The guy who lifts him out was the model for the Voltaire statue. That's the guy who plays the judge.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's pretty funny.
So then Ivan comes into a room. He wheels himself in there and he gets on Ralph.
No visitors. No visitors.
And then he sees Charlotte standing outside the museum. And he imagines her as Marie Antoinette.
Yes, it kind of double exposes with Marie Antoinette on top of her face.
He starts having imaginations, Karen.
Yes, he does. And he must meet her. No visitors, no visitors. Oh, wait, let me meet your girlfriend. Bring her in, please.
Yes, and Ivan whispers something to Professor Darcy. Ivan tells Charlotte that she looks just like one of the most beautiful statues he ever created. Florence continues examining the Joan of Arc statue, and she appears to find a toe tag, or at least part of one,
in the box where the statue came from, and she takes it, puts it in her pocket. Yeah.
But then someone removes it from her pocket, Karen.
We just see a close-up of a hand pulling it out of her pocket.
And we do see the ticket says number 7, Joan
G, I think. Yeah, it was torn. And I say they both have cool shoes and dresses, these women.
I was going to ask about the shoes, Karen.
Oh, awesome shoes.
So then the women leave, and Professor Darcy says to Ivan, I assume I will have the pleasure of having her pose for me.
Yes. So Ivan asks Charlotte if she would pose for his sculpture of Marie Antoinette, and she readily agrees. She says, oh, of course, I would love to. And then they leave. So that's when Professor Darcy is excited that he's the one she'll pose for. You've just listened to half of this week's episode. Are you loving it? If so, can you do us a big favor and leave a review wherever you listen? Reviews help us grow the podcast. We just want to say thanks so much for your support. Now let's get back to the good stuff.
And we see Florence meeting with her editor again. And she wants all the original photos of Joan Gale that the newspaper have. Florence tells her editor about the figure that looks identical to Joan Gale in the museum. She believes that a mold was taken of Joan Gale, and they are using it in the wax museum. They used the mold to make a wax figure of her.
Yes, she thinks they stole the body and then made a mold and then molded a statue from that. And she called it a death mask.
Yes.
I looked that up. I mean, I can guess what it means, but I thought I'd look it up anyway. So a death mask is a likeness, typically in wax or plaster cast, of a person's face after their death, usually made by taking a cast or impression from the corpse. They may be mementos of the dead or used for creation of portraits. It's sometimes possible to identify portraits that have been painted from death masks because of the characteristic slight distortions of the features caused by the weight of the plaster during the making of the mold. I thought that was kind of interesting. That you could.
I've seen casts of death masks. Usually, lots of famous people have it done for some reason.
Well, from the Middle Ages until the 19th century, it was to serve as a model for sculptors in creating statues and busts of the deceased person. So mostly famous people are going to have that done. Mm-hmm. Nobody's going to make sculptures of us. I mean,
yeah, and just something funny. I just realized the other day I saw. I don't even know how I happened upon it, but it was the grave of Jules Verne. And his monument is like a statue, a big elaborate statue. And part of it is him breaking out from his grave.
Nice.
And they used the death mask for his face.
So, yeah, I mean, if you want a sculpture or a painting of yourself after your death, let me know.
Okay.
I got you covered. It'll be a little distorted, but that's okay.
Then Florence checks her pocket for the toe tag and discovers it is missing.
They banter a lot.
And now she's really suspicious.
The editor and Florence, a lot of back and forth, those two.
Yeah, they're each like 400 words per minute.
Yeah, but kind of threatening each other like they don't like each other very much.
Then we cut to George in his palatial estate, paying Joe. And I didn't really understand that. Joe leaves, the phone rings, and it's Florence.
Well, he's getting his liquor.
Yeah, but we don't know that now.
Oh.
We don't find that out for a little while. Phone rings. It's Florence. She asks George to meet her at the wax museum that evening.
At 8:30.
Cut to the museum opening. Ivan's giving a tour and telling the people about the fire and that all the figures had to be recreated.
And he's talking about some of the different vignettes that are there.
They walk past Queen Victoria and she blinks as they walk past. Then he shows them Sir Walter Raleigh and Queen Elizabeth. Apparently there's some story about, I don't know, her walking in mud or some shit.
Well, he's putting down his coat. It's chivalry.
And then Le Duc d'Ambele, something like that.
Perfection. That was perfection.
Something like that. And Maximilian.
I just said lots of political leaders.
And Marat and Charlotte Corday from the French Revolution.
Yeah, she seemed pretty brutal.
Napoleon.
She wasn't the character in A Tale of Two Cities, was she?
I think she was probably based on her because the name is very similar.
Okay.
And Peter the Great also. Then the girls arrive and Florence makes a beeline for the Joan of Arc statue. Professor Darcy is there and he whispers something to Ivan. Then we hear him say, "I'd know him anywhere." And Ivan tells Darcy to keep track of him. It's the most important thing in his life.
Yeah, I didn't understand that at the time.
Didn't either. Then Ivan meets with Charlotte and Ralph. He calls Charlotte his little Marie Antoinette.
Yes, he does.
And Ivan is not very happy with the turnout. Not as many people as he had hoped.
No, but Ralph says the weather was against us and people are recovering from New Year's. They partied too much.
Ralph leaves to close up the museum. Ivan continues talking with Charlotte. He tells her she is very beautiful. And Professor Darcy watches from a distance. Florence continues examining the Joan of Arc statue, and Joan's lips move.
She looks like she's taking a little wax off from her foot or something, too.
She does try to scratch at the wax of her feet. Then Florence comes over and begins questioning Ivan. She asks about the Joan of Arc. Ivan says it was just completed recently, and Florence asks if he sculpted it. He tells her no, that it was done by Professor Darcy.
And then Professor Darcy says, "I only carried out your instructions."
Yes, and then Professor Darcy leaves, and Florence follows him out of the museum. She flags down George in his 1932 Auburn 12160 Roadster Karen.
Awesome.
And they begin to trail Professor Darcy.
Yes, they do.
Karen, you have any idea what one of those automobiles goes for now?
Oh, God.
Throw a number out and I'll tell you which range you're closest to, the low, the average, or the high, I guess.
$100,000.
You're not really close to any of them, actually.
What is it?
The average price, $305,377. That's based on recent auctions. $305,000.
What did I say?
100.
Oh, okay.
Up to $775,000.
Wow.
1932 Auburn 12160.
It's a nice looking
Roadster.
car.
Up, they follow Darcy. Charlotte tells George that she believes Darcy has something to do with the disappearance of Joan Gale's body. And Professor Darcy, I said, meets with Joe, ? And it is Joe. Darcy says he thinks he's being watched and followed, but Joe tells him he's just yella. You're just yella.
Yeah.
And Darcy talks about his nerves. Joe says he'll do nothing to help his nerves until it is delivered.
Exactly. So it's confusing here because we don't know yet exactly what's going on.
Yeah, we're being led in different directions.
Yes. Although we know that Igor is separate from Joe. And we know they're each doing something, but we can't tell. Are they working together, separately?
Yeah.
It's very
I didn't
confusing.
know. I wasn't sure. I thought maybe Joe was like a silent partner this point or something.
Yeah, but after he burned the museum down, I didn't see how that could possibly be. So
yeah, I know.
it was strange, but they're definitely got almost an Agatha Christie kind of thing going here where we don't know. There's a lot of different possibilities and we can't tell exactly what's happening, which makes it a little confusing.
Right. And I think at
to
one
try to
point
follow it.
We see Hugo getting ready to leave and he puts on a hat and coat, just like the one the disfigured man wore.
You can't really tell what's going on. I was confused.
So Florence and George drive up to the building and Florence gets out and enters the building through a basement window. She finds a pine box, much like the one they've been carrying the bodies around in.
Well, she conveniently goes through the window where there's 2 boxes in a barrel that makes it easy for her to step down from there. And then there's a frog inexplicably there that ribbits and scares her over and over as she walks away.
So she finds the box and then she hears a door and footsteps and the man with the disfigured face enters. And he begins pushing the box towards where Florence is hiding behind a barrel. Then he hears a door shut and he stops what he is doing and he heads back upstairs.
This scene made no sense to me and still doesn't.
No.
Why did he need to move the box?
I don't know. And then Florence leaves.
We do see that he has a burned face. This is the first time we see him, correct?
No, we saw him in the morgue.
Oh, that's right. Okay. So he comes up, pushes this box, and then leaves. Mm-hmm. It was weird.
Knowing what we know now, maybe he was going to try to bust Joe.
But with his burned face?
I
don't know. It was odd, but it's a little scary for her.
He was going to try to get Joe in trouble, maybe, to pay him back for burning down the museum. I don't know.
But I don't think that's
maybe he's going to try to steal what's in the box to
maybe
hurt Joe. But anyway, Florence leaves. The cops begin questioning George because he's parked on the street.
And they've been following him since he left the jail because, he's suspicious. They don't know if he killed Joan or not.
Florence runs back to the car. She tells the cops that she believes the body of Joan Gale is in the box in the basement of the building. Police agree to investigate. Just then, Darcy leaves, and one of them chases him, and the others break into the building.
Yes.
The police and Florence begin searching the building.
Well, she keeps saying it's in the basement, and the policemen go, you two, go upstairs and search. You two, go over here and search. She keeps saying it's in the basement. It's in the basement. No one's listening to her.
Yeah, but that doesn't stop her from going in the office and looking through the drawers.
I know, but she kept saying it's in the basement. And she describes the man as ugly.
Yeah, the man with the disfigured face.
Mm-hmm.
So eventually they go to the basement and find the box.
They go to the basement where she's been saying it is.
The police pry the lid open. They open the box very slowly, revealing what appears to be a burlap bag. And they remove the bag and they find the box is full of booze, Karen.
Yep. And they all laugh at her. She didn't care, though.
Nope. Just then the police bring Darcy in and begin questioning him.
He said he's done nothing wrong.
Yeah, Darcy says the house belongs to a man named Worth, and apparently he is a bootlegger. Then George says, well, he hopes his booze was delivered.
Right. Right in front of all the cops.
So that is why he was paying George earlier for his booze.
And what does Florence do?
And Florence takes some of the booze before she leaves. She
her percentage.
It's her percentage, yes.
Yeah.
And then the cops leave, and before Florence leaves, she sees a stack of boxes move, perhaps a hidden door, ?
Yeah. A box moves and she screams and leaves without her booze because they all left her down there. Nobody waited for her.
And then she screams and leaves. Basically, that whole scene in the basement is kind of weird.
Well, except we
never know why the boxes move. We don't know why the man with the burned face is moving the box.
Yeah, why he was there at all. But we do find out that Joe's a bootlegger.
Yeah, so that's basically what that's all about. And we cut to the police station, and they're going through Professor Darcy's things. He has a pack of camels and the tools of a junkie, Karen.
Yeah, they know he's a junkie.
As well as a pocket watch that one of the policemen is very interested in. The officer takes the watch to show the chief and Florence, and they learn it belonged to Judge Ramsey, who is the missing judge.
Because at first the policeman says, nah, I don't want to talk to him. He's just a junkie. Then they bring in the watch and he goes, oh yeah, bring him in. I want to talk to him now.
They bring him in for questioning. Then we cut to a vat of boiling wax, I wrote.
Looks like the hot tub's going.
Yes, with lots of Froggy's fog.
Yep.
And the disfigured man carries a body down the stairs and puts it on a table. And I wrote Dr. X set and prop. They reused a lot of the props from Dr. X.
Oh, okay.
You can see him in the background. Remember they had that contraption about which one was lying and all that stuff?
Yes. Yeah, it did look familiar.
So then cut to Florence leaving the police station. She gets in George's car, right?
Yes.
And they drive to the newspaper office very erratically, I wrote.
But what does he say to her?
George says he's only known Florence 24 hours and he's already in love with her.
Yep.
And Florence tells him it usually doesn't take that long.
She's a character. He says he wants to marry her.
Yes.
And she says, how much money you got? And he says, a lot.
He has no idea. A lot.
But it's a lot.
She says she will run it by the board of directors. So they arrive at the newspaper. Florence tells George to wait and she will be right back. And she meets with her editor again. And she asks if there's any art on Judge Ramsey. So she's looking for photographs of Judge Ramsey.
Yes.
Clock is 8:21 p.m., Karen.
They've been with the junkie all night.
And Darcy tells the cops he found the watch in a taxi cab about 3 months ago.
They're
Doesn't know
impressed
where he was, where he was going.
Right. But they're impressed how long he's held out as a junkie. They say they usually can crack him much earlier than this, but he's held out a long time.
And we see Charlotte outside the wax museum. Otto follows her. The door is open, so she enters, and she's looking for Ralph. Otto locks the door behind her. And the executioner's eyes move as Charlotte walks around.
Yeah, who was that?
It's never explained.
But
So Charlotte tries to talk to Hugo, the deaf mute, but then she gets scared and then Ivan enters. And I wrote they share a moment. Ivan tells her that Ralph is in the workroom and he will call him for her. And she says, no, don't bother. I will go.
Well, he thinks she's there because she's accepted the invitation from last night to model for him. But she says, no, she needs to speak with Ralph. They had a little disagreement last night, and she said some things that she wants to talk to him about. She feels bad about. She wants to make up with Ralph.
So Charlotte goes down into the workroom and looks for Ralph.
It's a very modern deco building, it looks like to me, is what I wrote. But she keeps calling Ralph, going deeper and deeper into the bowels of this building.
Yep. At one point,
and doors keep closing
shut behind her and locks.
Yeah, they do that multiple times, and she keeps going down further.
Eyes follow her. Then another door opens, and she goes through.
Yes.
Descending farther down into the workroom.
I wasn't sure I'd do that,
Another door enters, and we see a shadow, and as Ivan wheels himself in, more shadow play there. He tells her that Ralph has left, and he has sent Otto to find him. Then Ivan begins to struggle to get out of his wheelchair to show Charlotte around.
This is the birthplace of all his creations, he says.
And Charlotte goes to help him, and this is when he gives her the look.
She's his masterpiece. My Marie Antoinette.
Suddenly he stands very sturdy, and he embraces Charlotte and calls her his Marie Antoinette. Charlotte screams and runs away.
Okay, it took me this long until he stood up and was not in the wheelchair to figure out that who he was.
Hmm.
Because I couldn't figure out who he was. I knew the burned faced guy must have been, the man locked in the museum in London.
Mhm.
I could not figure I couldn't figure out who he was. Igor. Like,
He
who
looks
is
just
he?
like him. He looks like just like the guy burned in the fire earlier.
But I didn't, because I wasn't
Only
watching
12
it
years
then.
older.
Yes, but I wasn't intently watching as much. I was just, okay, sculptor. And I did not put it together until right now when he stood up.
Okay.
That's embarrassing, but I couldn't figure out why they were separate, who they were. I knew I'd missed something, but anyway, so yes, embarrassingly, this is when I figured it out.
So it's a pretty good scene when he stands up and then his face and they cut to Fay Wray's face, and it's pretty cool. It's a good scene. So Florence and George arrive at the wax museum. Of course, a cop stops him and tells George can't park there, makes him move the car.
But she goes in.
Well, Ralph arrives.
Oh, yeah, because he has the key.
Yeah.
Because the door is locked. Because
he lets Florence in because she says she wants to do a story on Ivan. So Ralph lets her in. And Florence has a photo of the judge and begins comparing it to the wax figures.
And the judge is Voltaire.
Yes. Cut back to the police station, and Darcy's had enough. He's spilling his guts.
Yep, he's cracked.
He says the judge was killed because he looked like Voltaire. He tells him that Ivan killed him. He says the only thing he did was to keep track of worth for Ivan. He says the judge is there embalmed in wax. The whole wax museum is a morgue. A morgue, I tell you, a morgue.
Yes, he loses it.
Cut back to the museum. Ivan tells Charlotte that he will make her immortal and she will be beautiful forever.
She's not on board.
No, she begins hitting Ivan in the face.
Pounding his face.
That he is wearing a wax mask as it breaks away and we see the face of the disfigured man, Karen. Charlotte screams. Florence and Ralph hear her and head that direction.
And then she says, your face was wax, for all those who missed that moment, just in case they wanted to go back to it and say, your face was wax. And
Charlotte calls Ivan a fiend.
Yes. He doesn't like that.
No, Ivan says, no, he is not a fiend, but there was one. A fiend that made him into what he is now. And he runs over and yells at a box. He says, you did this. And he opens the box, revealing the body of Joe Worth.
For 12 years, I searched for the fiend.
And Faye stands there and waits. Or Charlotte stands there. I thought that was a good opportunity for her to run away, but she did not.
Because he opens the box and Worth falls right out. And then Charlotte screams and Ralph is just following the screams now at this point.
Yeah, they enter the workroom, Ralph and Florence. Ralph and Ivan struggle on the stairway, but Ralph falls down the stairs. Florence runs away screaming. I have.
Very well in her heels, I will add.
Yes.
Exceedingly well.
She ran up those stairs in her heels. Yeah.
In her heels.
I was impressed with that, Karen.
I was too.
But apparently Ralph's not quite dead yet. He gets up and he and Ivan fight some more. Eventually, Ivan hits him with a club and he's knocked unconscious.
They fight poorly too, I will say. There's some scenes that aren't great.
Ivan puts Charlotte on a gurney and wheels her under a Batman trap, I wrote.
Yes. Exactly.
The container above her will fill with wax, and when it overflows, she will be preserved forever. We just have to wait for the wax to be pumped up there and for the container to be filled and then to finally overflow.
If she could just reach her utility belt, she could get out of this situation.
But Ivan begins undressing Charlotte.
Well, she can't be in clothes when the wax.
And turns on the spigots.
Yeah, why doesn't he
But we
just
do
dip
see her.
her?
She's like wrapped in some
I know, but
sheet or something.
But that's not going to be a good way to do it.
I was disappointed.
Yeah. She should have just been dipped in the hot tub of wax.
So then George arrives.
Yes, because he's moved the car and brought the police in. I think Florence went and got him too, and the police.
So they come back in, but the door is locked and they can't get in. And Ivan prepares a hypodermic needle for Charlotte. Did you enjoy that, Karen?
Yes, always my favorite.
She wakes and screams, but she can't move. She is bound to the table, her hands and feet.
Shackles.
Police arrive and break through the door. They do so pretty easily, I wrote. Police run down to the workroom. And I wrote, Ivan, for an old man, is pretty strong.
Yes, and agile.
Yes,
I agree.
He beats the policeman and throws his wheelchair at two of them. He runs up the stairs and one of the other policemen shoot him. He falls from above into the vat.
You knew that was coming.
Yes. Ralph regains consciousness just in time to rush over and move the gurney holding Charlotte so that the wax does not spill down on her. Cut back to the newspaper office. I think Florence is finishing her story and everyone's appears to be congratulating her for writing a story or something.
Well, it's a big scoop.
Well, no one has read it. She just finished it.
Well, I think they all knew what it was.
She goes to meet with her editor again. She tells him how about that story? The editor
Put that in your
her,
pipe and smoke it.
That's right. Editor tells her to get out of the newspaper business and marry him. We hear a horn beep and Florence looks out the window down at George waiting for her by the car. Florence turns to her editor and puts out her hand and shakes it and says, she'll do it. I'm going to get even with you, you dirty stiff. And then they kiss.
Yeah.
The end. All right, Karen, anything you really enjoyed in this film that you picked?
I enjoyed that it was a strong female character. She was the lead, I would say. Florence.
Mm-hmm.
So I liked that a lot. You know, she was the only female in that core of writers and everything. So I thought that was very cool. I did not watch it carefully enough, I found, as it went on, to grasp all the twists and turns, which is cool because it's a movie that you could watch again, and I bet you would get more out of it the second time. There's details and little plot twists and things where you go, oh, I didn't see that. And then, oh, that makes sense. So I like that about it because I didn't figure out a lot. I was really slow on this one. And I like that about it. I thought the special effects were pretty good. Besides the fact that the wax sculptures were blinking and breathing and things but it's difficult to hold. They did hold still, very still. It was just you can't stop breathing. But it kind of added to the creepiness of it too, a little bit, that they were almost alive. I think they could have went a little further with that and made it so that they were alive underneath the wax for a while. So yeah, what did you like about it?
Well, I thought there were some really nice shots. I enjoyed the shadows.
There were. Shadow work was
play.
Good. Yeah.
I really enjoyed the 1930s speech and the way they talked.
Well, and the clothes too. Yeah, she's like abroad, she was bantering, and yeah, that was nice to hear that.
The sets were great, I thought.
Yeah.
And I thought the acting was very good, especially the guy who played Darcy when he was like spilling his guts, and he was very convincing as an addict.
Yes.
The whole time. He was well done. And that could have been partly because of his makeup, which
makeup was good too.
Yeah.
I mean, the women had a very 1930s look with, of course they would, but the thin eyebrows and the bright lips, and the costumes were amazing.
Yes, we should go back to that, Karen.
I know. Absolutely.
Thin eyebrows and bright lips.
No, I don't want to put those eyebrows on, but the clothes I would definitely wear. So would you? You like the hats and the coats and all that stuff?
Yeah, I like it. I like 30. Yeah, I really like
30s and 40s.
30s.
Nice clothes era.
Films and noir films and things like that.
Yeah.
I like them. Anything you didn't like, Karen?
Only that you really had to pay attention to it. And I think I lost some things because I didn't. if someone told me, pay attention to those men in the beginning, close attention, I would have pieced it together a little bit better. But it even took me a while to realize that Joe Worth was that guy in the office. I mean, it took me a long time to, okay, now I see who he is and I get it now. And it took me a long time because I didn't burn those couple of men at the beginning into my brain. I just kind of watched it.
Right.
And again, I think when we watch it and we're taking notes, in some ways we're paying more attention and in other ways we're paying less attention. And so things can get lost.
Right.
When we're watching because we're trying to get details and I missed things in this one, which says a lot for the film. You need to pay attention. This isn't one you can be like cleaning or cooking and kind of watching, or you won't know what the hell's going on.
Yeah, I had to stop and rewind quite a few times to catch what I missed as I was making notes. I had the closed captioning on. So the part when they were talking about laudanum, I had to rewind that like at least 10 or probably 10 times before I caught what the hell they were talking about. That's when I turned the closed captioning on so I could read what the actual word was. Laudanum. Oh, okay.
I think we've talked about it before. I think the only thing that was out of place, and maybe there's something to it and I just missed it, was when Igor was down with the bottles of liquor and pushed it. I don't know what that scene was.
Don't know either.
I don't know why he was there. I know why the scene's there, because then we get Joe as the bootlegger and he's the one that's selling the liquor to George. And it all that wraps up a lot of loose ends, but I don't know why Igor was there.
Yeah, I told you I watched it 3 times because the Blu-ray has different commentaries from like a film historian and also a film like restorer and things. Well, even in the commentaries, they even said that they're not quite sure what that scene's all about.
No, good. Okay, well, that makes me feel a little better.
And there were a few continuity issues I noticed because we see the guy put the dagger in, but then we see it again in just a minute. Like the next scene, it's like a different shot. He's doing it again. And there's some of that with Fay Wray, where at one point she and Florence are talking to Ivan. She puts her hand on her hip and she does it as Florence is walking over there, I think. And then when Florence is there and they're standing there, she does it again. So little things like that. Yeah, I think maybe I caught Florence's head wear on the wrong side once.
Oh.
I wasn't real sure. She had that thing. She always wore that thing on her, had something on her head most of the time.
A hat?
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I guess it's a hat. It was more like a knit.
Yeah, it's like a beret, but it was a hat. Yeah. Kind of.
And she would wear it from on one side and then the other, depending on her outfit. And I think at one point I caught her in the move from one side to the other. But one thing I was really impressed with was how good it looked. The film itself for like a 2-color process.
Yeah, I agree. I thought I messed it up. I was like, because as I was watching it, I thought, oh, wait a minute, this looks pretty good. So I looked it up just to be sure. It's.
They did a good job restoring it.
Yeah.
So on the Blu-ray, there's another short on there where they show lots of before and after, and they talk about what they did to fix it. It's pretty impressive what they did. But I kind of thought, well, it's just like Photoshop. You're going through and using something like Photoshop on every single frame, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A film, but they did a good job. It's really good. This is kind of a Pygmalion story, isn't it, Karen?
Is it?
Yes.
Would you like to elaborate?
You know what Pygmalion is?
I should, but I can't think of it.
It refers to Greek mythology. Pygmalion was a sculptor in Greek mythology who basically fell in love with his statue.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, the commentary mentioned that several times. I had to look it up.
I should have remembered that.
All right, what kind of cocktail rating you want to give it? Unless there's anything else you really enjoyed or did not.
I'd give it a 2.
Yep, me too.
I really liked it.
I did too. Even after watching it 3 times.
I could definitely watch again.
But 2 times with commentary. You should watch it with the
commentary.
Can't believe it's so hard. Well, it's not hard.
I know. That's what I was thinking when I was watching it. Why is this not available? Because it's so
you can
good.
buy it. It's not hard to buy it, but I'm
still,
not sure why it's not available on some streaming service.
It's definitely worth the $2.99 or the $3.99 to watch it.
Absolutely.
I was thinking that while I was watching it. Why is this not available? It should be. Considering some of the dogs that we watched that are available, this one should definitely be available.
All right. What do you think of the Galaxy
I like it.
Magic Mule?
Again, I would make it with ginger ale instead of ginger beer. It's a cool little drink.
It is.
And if you make a bunch of the ice cubes with the magic blue ice, I think it'd be cool at a party. Anything like lemonade drink would do it. Anything like that would change the color, and you could make a lemonade and vodka or whatever.
All right. Anything we learned today, Karen?
We learned a little about Voltaire.
Yes.
Laudanum.
Yep.
I got a Def Leppard reference in there.
Well, you tried to.
It's theater in the round. We learned about Butterfly Pea Flower.
Yep.
And pH. Pounds to dollars in 1933. And what was the car?
It was a 1932 Auburn 12160 Roadster, Karen. I talked very briefly about Pygmalion.
Yes.
1930s fashion.
Yes. And death masks that I'm going to take of you when you pass away. But then what do I do with it afterwards? That's Karen, the scary thing.
Karen.
You think it might be?
We all know I'm going to outlive you all.
That's true. That is very true.
I mean, I'm so much younger. This just stands to reason.
I mean, yeah, starting with that. My apologies. I should be talking to you about my death mask. It's very similar to Bucket of Blood in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Did he credit this?
Roger Corman borrowed from it. Hell, I think when they did the Batman shit, they borrowed from it.
That's true. Oh, you got to put a Batman.
The more I talked about it, the more
you got to put Batman reference in there. Yeah, because they would always explain to Batman what was going to happen and then leave. So, I'm talking about the Adam West old.
Yeah. 1960s Batman.
And if he could get out of anything, if he could just reach his utility belt.
Anything else, Karen? Or are we ready to talk about next film?
Well, if we must move on from Batman and utility belts, what do you got for us next time?
Oh, is it my choice, Karen?
It is.
Oh, Karen, for my next film, I have chosen the 1978 film, Damien, Omen 2.
Oh, boy. Okay. Any particular reason?
Glad you asked, Karen. Our next episode comes out March, right? We're in March now, March 8th. And March 6th is Jonathan Scott Taylor's 61st birthday. He was the boy who played Damien in Damien Omen 2.
Is he different than the Damien in
He is.
Omen? Okay. Oh, he's probably older, huh? Like
Yes.
they got a new... Makes sense. Well, that was screaming for a sequel. There's no question. Just from the end of it. So
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I know how you like sequels.
I do enjoy it. Well,
Might as well do one.
mostly I enjoy the potential because sequels are generally not as well done as the originals.
Generally,
Yeah.
there is the rare,
Agreed.
Empire Strikes Back.
Yes.
There we
Is
go.
there a drink to go
got
along
Star
with this?
Wars in now. Oh, although you did mention Darth Vader earlier.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you ask if there was a drink, Karen?
I did. Is there a drink to go along with this?
There is a drink, Karen.
And what's that, Greg?
It's called Satan's Spawn.
Oh, perfection. I'm not even going to ask why you picked it. I'm just going to say what's in that one.
Apparently, it's a shot, Karen.
Of course it is.
So we're going to need 1 ounce. Very simple shot. Only 2 ingredients. we're going to need fire, water, cinnamon, schnapps.
Can I
Or
use
just-
any?
Or just
Yeah.
cinnamon schnapps. I got
It's hard
hot
to s-
damn. I'm going to use that.
Okay.
And Tabasco sauce.
Oh, no. You're killing me, Smalls.
Never seen that movie. Don't know the reference.
You know the reference. You just haven't seen the
Well,
movie.
I guess. Yeah. For a long time, I didn't. People kept saying that to me. I'm like, what the hell is that all about? Anyone you need to thank this week, Karen?
I'm going to thank our listener. There's a lot of podcasts out there. Thanks for spending time with us. What about you, Greg? Who do you need to thank?
Karen, I'm going to thank the great people of the Buckeye State.
Did they step up?
Yes, they did. And also, I need to thank the band Verse 13 for providing all the music in the Scary Spirits podcast.
The music does make the podcast better.
Anything else, Karen?
Really take some time and watch this movie. I think you will really enjoy it.
Yes, and if you purchase the Blu-ray or DVD, watch the film with the commentaries. Lots of good info in there. If you're into that kind of thing. I love that stuff.
I think if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably into that stuff too. And please drink responsibly.
Yes.
Hey, it's Karen, and I'm here to talk to you about getting social with us. Did you know you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Scary Spirits Podcast? Or check out our website, scaryspirits.com. If you have something to say, email us at info@scaryspirits.com. And as always, thanks so much for listening. Please drink responsibly.